Ayo, how's it going? Alright, today I'm gonna be drawing and working on this slide. Periodically, I'm going to lift up the paper and kind of show you what I've been working on, but I figured I'm drawing a comic. It's more like a manga, but I'm not like Japanese, and I'm not like drawing specifically in manga style. So I still kind of consider it more of a comic because it has like kind of stuff that I learned as I read like The Walking Dead, like just the cross hatching and stuff, and the way I'm going about it. It's not traditional manga style. So, but it's heavily influenced because manga is insanely cool. So I'm just gonna kind of like talk a little bit as I draw. So one of the key things to work on when you're drawing slides like this is what to do with the background. And I really like cross hatching. What is cross hatching? You say, here, right there, see those lines right there, right there, that's cross hatching. You overlay them and it adds texture and also shading, right? Because in theory, if you're using an ink pen, in theory, right? Okay, I'm using this. So this is not like your standard pen, Bic pen, right? This will always give you the same color consistency. So when you're using pens like this, like inkwell type pens or just darker ink pens, the result is a consistent color of ink. So here's a question. If your pen is always giving out the same shade of black, right? How are you going to shade things? Because if you color it all black, all you're doing is coloring it all black. You only have black and white. How do you shade things? Cross-hatching. Cross-hatching creates the illusion, depending on the angles and how many lines, it creates the illusion of shading, and also sort of the angle that something might be at. Like if you change the cross-hatching to be more like these angles, it'll look like it's flat or the floor. More up and down, side to side, that could be like a wall. The idea is, I need a blank sheet of paper all of a sudden. I'm going to explain this the way I learned it from somebody who draws comics. Okay. I show you this piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. Your eyes wander all around on it. Now, I show you this piece of paper with this dot on it. Your eyes are going to, of course, look around the blank sheet of paper, but they're going to center around the dot, right? This is kind of where comic theory comes in, right? If that can even be a thing. So, your eyes are moving around the dot, and they might be spiraling, they might be going back and forth, but they're probably going to be centering around that dot. Now, let's say I add in some things, and I'll show you what I am adding in. I'm also changing the dot size. Now, okay, line, dot. Your eyes, as they follow the line, they make this side-to-side motion. So you can actually simulate movement on a panel by drawing lines that go in a direction, because your eyes will have a tendency to follow the lines, and it'll mimic a perceptual experience of movement or direction in your eye just by lines. Same thing with cross-hatching and shading and walls. So things that go up and down, side to side, remind us of vertical, horizontal. It's a wall. Things that are kind of like remind us more of angles on the floor. Like you see your iPhone charger on the floor, it's kind of like, or you can have lines that go straight up and down, but the idea is you keep it within a specific angle deviation, and you can put angles outside of it, but you keep it within a specific deviation to mimic movement of your eyes that kind of simulate an angle or a space or perception of a space that is supposed to be of a specific relationship to you. It sounds really complicated. It's actually kind of just intuitive, to be honest. A good way to learn is actually to go online, look up slides by really good comic artists, manga artists, just look at the line, the cross-hatching. It's really not that difficult to figure out if you just, look at the slides, practice, mimic, and then do your own thing, right? Some of the best ways to learn are actually to mimic people who are, like, better than you. You start off as mimicking to learn. Look at this eye. That's hilarious. I guess I rubbed it off this eye. There we go. Anyway, mimicking, right? Mimicking technique can be a good way to learn. And so the premise of this comic manga thing that I am drawing is, well, I'm having a hard time coming up with a good plot. But the idea is it's going to be kind of like a sci-fi psychology type of comic, and there's going to be like a dream sequence underlying the plot line. And it's going to kind of direct the different things that go on within the comic, like the different emotional dilemmas, the different enemies and relationships that form and are stressed. And I'm going to try to express that in like a dream sequence because, well, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology, which means technically I know pretty much nothing about psychology, right? Because I have a bachelor's degree. I am applying to doctorate programs just because I want to get a doctorate degree to learn more. But I do a lot of extra reading right outside of my degree. And one thing I focus on are fantasy systems, belief systems, things like mythologies, weird stories, delusions, hallucinations, stuff like that. These typically parallel people's real life events. So I want to create a comic that has a dream sequence to try to explain the psychology behind fantasy and fantasy products, symbolization, and things that go on within someone's daily life, their emotional dilemmas, because it's not just a mirroring, right? Your dreams are not always, I should say always, right? Your dreams can mirror your waking life. There's actually quite a few theories on dreams, and I think all of them are actually applicable, but at different times and to varying degrees. You have the Freudian theory of dreams, which is more of a symbolic interpretation of repression, so things that get pushed away from your awareness during your daily life come back at night. So you might be like, I really love my parents, and then that part of you that doesn't, you push it away and it comes back to you in nightmares, and you have dreams of like monster parents, or like ghosts or witches or mean kings and stuff like that. And it's all that repressed anger, things that you don't let yourself tap into. Of course, Freud would say, well, sexuality is part of that, and to varying degrees, he's right. He's not right all the time. It depends. There's very specific instances that Freudian psychology will be entirely on. Just listen to Mindhunter. It's about like serial killers, psychopaths, sociopaths. Freudian psychology actually explains the fantasy products of these individuals. It predicts it, explains it relatively well in terms of how they view it and how they understand it. How you view something impacts how you respond to it and contextualize it, process it, what it means to you, how it motivates you. So how you view your own internal experiences actually shapes how you respond to them, right? So Freud wasn't necessarily like explaining an ultimate universal cosmic principle. He was describing an outlook on internal experiences, external experiences, fantasy products that produces a specific reaction. Not necessarily a response, more of a reaction, right? Because a response versus a reaction is like I put my hand on the stove, I pull it back. We have cognitive structures in our brain that help us contextualize our experiences. If these are not questioned, it's more of a reaction, right? Because if we think A leads to B and we never question the connection, then it's just going to be a reaction. But a response questions the fundamental principles and says, okay, there's something more going on here. That is more like Jungian psychology. Jungian psychology, he looked across cultures, across people, and found stereotypical elements within fantasy products. And he's like, okay, there has to be a reason why there's common elements across fantasy products, and why even in different cultures that assign different meanings to experiences, there's still these figures that pop up in certain sequences or variations of sequences, but they were distinguishable within narratives, within symbols, within artwork. So there's all these different theories. There's some theories that say it's memory consolidation, it's your neurons firing randomly. There's tons of them. To some extent, each of them is applicable during different periods of sleep. And honestly, let's be real, sleep is not the only place that we experience strange ideas, strange things. I mean, just watch it Across the Spider-Verse or something like that, and look at the plot line. It's bizarre, it's dreamlike. We don't necessarily need to be asleep to experience these types of things. Okay, so I want to take all this, put it into a comic. I want to have, I have a list of like villains that personify certain struggles. And a few of them are taken from my reading on psychopaths, on reading Mindhunter and stuff along those lines, because I like to express it, but then fit it within a more complicated structure, right? You don't just have a psychopath, you have a psychopath in a society interacting with people who aren't psychopaths. So there's an impact on the general collective, and that has different effects, right? You have to examine it within a system and a system of effects and how it impacts everybody else, and then you get a different perspective on the experiences. That's where you get that translation from, like, Freud would be like, and then you get the more Jungian perspective, and then you see it more as symbolic. You're acting out. You could say to a serial killer, the way that you're killing people is a projection of your internal emotional conflicts, and the way that you transform or associate meaning to somebody external to you is you mapping on those conflicts onto somebody and manipulating it because you can't do it internally. That would be more of a Jungian analysis of how a serial killer kills somebody. Jung would look at it like, first of all, it's likely projection, it's likely symbolic, it likely represents different emotions and internal experiences of the person. It's likely associated with potentially, abnormal brain functioning or trauma or mixtures of various different things. So Jung would look at it definitely through more of a symbolic lens. So he would look at it and compare it to stuff like Aztec rituals or human sacrifice throughout the ages. And then he would compare it to like alchemical symbolism and then occult symbolism, philosophical analysis. You talk to the person, get what they think, analyze their dreams, analyze their parents, analyze their relationships, analyze the various things that they believed in, and then try to see what they know, what is things they don't understand or things that are terrifying to them, internal experiences, and then how they feel as they go about their experiences of acting stuff out. So I want stuff like that, but then I also want more normal type of things in there, like relationships and loss and vulnerability and all these. So I want to run sort of the range of experiences within this comic, and I think a comic is a good way to do it because you can convey a lot of things visually that you can't necessarily convey in words, and a huge part of it will be character development and trying to express in artwork the different internal experiences, the emotions, the struggle, and also the motivation and the meaning that is being assigned to things within the environment. So those are my ideas for this comic, and I definitely want to add in stuff I know. That's why I want to add the psychology perspective and add in almost like a sci-fi, because psychology definitely is a newer science, right? There's a lot to be learned. There's still a lot to dream about in psychology. There's so much we don't understand that is just as fascinating, and things that we are learning as like quantum physics or really any other branch of science. But it's unfortunate often that people do not take stuff like depth psychology more seriously, because it poses some of the most profound and intellectual questions of our age, sort of. I mean, understanding how human perception works, how dreams work, how culture is formed, how symbolization works, how people express themselves during periods of historic change, how common public beliefs impact how people perceive themselves and their personal experiences. It all is extremely interesting and very, very important to understand, especially as society as a whole deals with more and more complex issues and problems, especially relating to human differences, right? There's been so many conflicts, wars, battles over differences in people, differences in identity, differences in origin, in the system of belief, in religion, pretty much any aspect of personal identity can lead to catastrophic conflict. It has historically, and we have to question what is going on. Why is it like this? And how does the past impact this? How does psychology play into all of this? How do fantasy products impact world events? How do systems of belief shape wars and large-scale issues? These are all things I think that are worth addressing. And honestly, to break them down, you have to compare belief systems, you have to compare symbols, you have to compare accounts. You have to look for patterns in what people experience and what they talk about in order to reach some level of understanding in how different groups interact and how the individual changes to open up or cut off, push away, scapegoat, or accept. Really, when it comes down to it, and this is an existential philosophy, psychology is all about it's all about deriving meaning and purpose in your life, right? It's an existential problem because we have to decide how we want to react to those that are different than us. And it seems like a trivial question, right? It shouldn't really matter, some would say. But how you react to what is unknown to you, what is new, what is novel, what is seeking a space to be heard and expressed. How you react to that shapes many, many other experiences in your life. I want to make a comic to explore these issues, and almost like how Plato, through Socrates, is able to explore philosophically what an ideal government would look like, an ideal society, an ideal person. This was done in fantasy, right? So potentially, in order to ask and answer questions that we can't necessarily act out in the world, potentially, fantasy gives us an outlet to experiment with different outcomes, different responses, different ways of perceiving things. I honestly think media, comics, artwork, it is meant to give us a different perspective on things and to challenge our view on things, to make us reconsider our assumptions. It's supposed to make us better people. If the art you're consuming is not challenging you to open up or challenging you to learn or to think, honestly, it's probably pretty low quality. My goal is to make artwork that actually matters. Now, it's like, is that like the greatest thing you've seen? Of course not. There are much better manga artists, comic artists, and it's not even finished, right? I have to put, this is a text bubble, and this is like an action bubble. I have to fill those bubbles in. I have to do details on the screen. But slide by slide, I'm trying to find ways to express this. And I write a bunch, I think a bunch, I take a bunch of music and I put it into each slide because I'm trying to express something that I feel is something that most people experience. Conflicts, perceptions, anxieties, fears, hopes, dreams, difficulties, character development, actual character development, something that is uncomfortable. It challenges people to think, to reconsider, to open up. If your artwork is not testing those things in you, I just don't think it's that profound, it's that meaningful, it has that much to say. So, anyway, I draw. I don't grow comics. I draw comics, and this is a slide in a comic I'm drawing right now, a manga comic, something along those lines. I will try to show more when I get them done. I want to do a sequence. I want to do like some music, like I make goofy music. I want to do like a sequence of slides with some music, and then people can read them and just consider or whatever they want to do with all of that. Anyway, thanks for watching this rambling video of me hyped up on like 3 cups of coffee and drawing and talking about weird things that I like. I want to go more in depth, and I think that as I draw and describe the plot and the narrative and the conflicts and everything else, I think I will make psychology videos to go along with it, to explain the symbolism, to explain what it means to me personally. And then, of course, it's for everybody else to interpret how they want and to experience it and to consider and to place it in their own world of experience and be like, hey, this is what it means to me. But I want to kind of like put out what I'm trying to convey to you, the audience, as someone who's writing it. Of course, though, it's open to interpretation. So have a good day, night, whatever. Peace out, people.